So one of my favorite quotes that I like to use every chance I get comes from a guy named Neil Postman. He's the author of a book called The End of Education and Amusing Ourselves to Death. And he writes that we cannot afford to waste the energy and idealism of the young. There's no question that listlessness, ennui, and even violence in school are related to the fact that students have no useful role to play in society. And I feel like as teachers, too often what we focus on in the classroom is to tell students to sit down, to put your phone away, and to listen to me lecture up here for about 45 minutes about something that, if we're all honest, if we're all honest with ourselves, often has very little connection to students' real lives or the things that they care about. And then we wonder why students are so bored with school. And those of us who are teachers, we know that all teenagers are not like the images that people use to caricature high school students. When they say that they're lazy slackers who do nothing but eat chips and play video games. You know, there are some who are like that, but certainly not all. And in fact, I think I would often argue that there's nothing like the passion of a teenager. Often that passion or focus is directed toward a boyfriend or a girlfriend. But if we can find ways to harness that passion for other things, it can often be unstoppable. And Peace Jam is about finding ways to connect that passion with some of the real issues and problems that we see facing our world today. And actually, even in my own classroom, over the last handful of years, we've been working on this issue with Immokalee farm workers. And this issue surrounds migrant farm workers in South Florida who are often mistreated, and some have called Immokalee, Florida, the capital of modern-day slavery. And surrounding a project that we've been working on with Peace Jam and these Immokalee farm workers, we asked students at our school to fast something in solidarity with these farm workers. And you wouldn't believe the responses. Kids going a week without video games, without chocolate. Some who went even I think 4 or 5 days without food altogether. But in getting back to my point in all this, the intention of these service projects that students participate in with Peace Jam is not just that students go and serve dinner at a homeless shelter or something like that. You know, while that is certainly a good and noble thing, the intention of these Peace Jam related service projects is that it's integrated into classroom learning and what students are doing in the classroom. Like recently in my classroom, one of the books that my students read and that we used to cover all the state-based reading standards was a book that was called Tomatoland. And it was actually just the next week, after we had finished reading this book, that students joined alongside with some of these Immokalee farm workers who had come all the way from Immokalee, Florida up here to Jacksonville. You know, another example, we read Night by Elie Wiesel each year in my class. And then at Peace Jam, students get to participate in something called 1 Million Bones Project. We talk about this idea that reading that book is not just about learning about the past, but to read it with the intention of finding ways from stopping it from happening again when we see it going on now. You know, we have a number of Bosnian students at our school for whom this not just this book, but this service project was particularly powerful. You know, their families had fled a similar genocide before some of them were born. You know, or another example, students might learn about the history of apartheid in South Africa, and then they get to meet and interact with Desmond Tutu as part of the Peace Jam process. You know, and through Peace Jam, my students actually submitted questions about a few years ago to Desmond Tutu. They got to have an online web chat with Lima Bowie just a few weeks ago. Some of my students got to actually travel to Ghana, Africa to participate in an activity alongside Lima Bowie. Not to be cliche, but the sky is really the limit in terms of the ways that teachers can integrate their service projects into classroom learning. Peace Jam is a way to kind of harness this positive energy that we talked about before that teenagers possess in a way that both leads to good and actually gets them to learn something through the process.